Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are looking at the first major time, well actually the first time in general, that any single poll in the United States Senate election in Pennsylvania has actually had Mehmet Oz leading. I know, that's crazy. I know you were all waiting for this day and it finally came. So let's look down here. Going down, down, down. Still lean D. Yes, it's this poll right here by Wick. Now, Wick is a little-known pollster, I'll admit it, but they have a relatively low margin of error and a relatively high sample size, both good things. They did take a while to make this, which from what I've heard, the longer you take to make a poll, generally the less accurate it is. I'm not sure to what extent that is true. But in this case, it is interesting because the poll shows Oz leading John Fetterman by 4 points when all the other polls show him behind by about 2. And now, obviously, Insider Advantage had this as a dead heat. That was big, but plenty of people have already talked about it. Nobody seems to have talked about this Wick poll, which is very, very significant, and we need to talk about this right now. So, let's go to the poll and actually see what it looks like. See how what kind of numbers they got. So likelihood. What is the likelihood you are voting? So most of these are extremely likely. That's good. We don't want registered voter polls. The fact that it's already a likely voter poll is a good sign. That's a very good sign. So I approve. I will vote early by mail. I will vote early in person. So that means the early vote is going to be about a third, a little bit less than a third of the electorate according to this poll. That's not bad, or already voted, actually a little bit over. If you combine all three of these, they mean that early vote, that these people already voted early or are voting early already. 61% voting on election day, and some people aren't sure. That's reasonable considering the election day vote should be larger than the mail-in vote, but we are seeing a record number of mail-in votes, so we will have to see how exactly accurate this part is. But so far, I think that is an okay polling of that. Thinking about your timing of casting, we can skip that. We don't need to. Thinking back to the 2020 presidential election, who did you vote for? If you did not vote, please select that option. Okay. So I will get back to this later, actually. It is showing that 1.5% voted for Biden than for Trump, which is actually a pretty reasonable estimate of what this actually looks like back in 2020, but I will get back to how they polled 2020, as that is an indicator of how accurate they are as a pollster. We will go down to the midterm elections. So this is like a generic ballot sort of question. I will vote for Republican candidates. I'm open to other candidates. And Republicans do have a lead here, so that is important to note. However, that does not necessarily show party affiliation. We look down here, they show the governor's race in a dead heat. They're showing it about a 2-point difference between Mastriano and Shapiro, which is, like, granted, that's an okay estimate. I don't think the race between Mastriano and Shapiro is going to be the 9-10 point margin everybody says it will. I don't think Mastriano is going to win. I think he's basically screwed because the RNC is refusing to endorse him or really work with him at all on any ads or anything. And that's a pity for Republicans who want to pick off this seat. I don't think he can win. I think it's like Shapiro really does have the upper hand unless Mastriano starts building some of that Glenn Youngkin momentum towards Election Day. But right now, I don't see this race flipping. However, I would agree that this is a decent margin. I think Republicans are really going to turn out to get Mastriano in office. He's going to excite the Trump base. He's going to win over independents who are unhappy with Tom Wolf. But Josh Shapiro, still a relatively decent, well, not decent, but like a well-known character in Pennsylvania politics, who's been Attorney General there for like 6 years. So I would say he definitely has the upper hand just because he's been elected statewide before, and Mastriano is more little known and is also just not getting the funding he needs. Okay, so far this is a decent poll. I do not pay any attention to this. This is like showing Mastriano ahead, but the sample size is only 34. I don't know why they did that. Oh, it's undecideds. So 34. So 34 of those undecideds, they are actually about split between Mastriano and Shapiro, which is interesting to see. So that is showing maybe if Mastriano had better funding, he would be able to increase in the undecideds in these polls. But right now, it is looking like he barely has a lead with undecideds. That's not unreasonable, and here's the main part that we get to. Oz is leading by 4.5% over John Fetterman, and in the undecideds, Oz has a significant advantage over Fetterman, as we can see, of about 18 points. That's pretty significant. And then we look down here, and we are looking at the party registration, which has Republicans with about a 3.5 advantage over the Democrats in terms of party registration. Now, assuming that this was not the huge red wave year, like assuming we were kind to Democrats and said, okay, this is not a huge red wave year, this is a neutral year, we'll say neutral, then let's say that Republicans and Democrats are about tied. So Republicans lose that 3.5% advantage, and Oz is still leading in this poll, which is significant. That means that there are probably some Democrats voting for Oz because they're turned off by Fetterman, and then independents. If we look here, they make up 23% of the electorate, which is reasonable, I would say. And then something else, maybe a bit high for something else. You don't generally run across voters who vote for other parties a whole lot. Like you don't run across libertarians or like Green Party members. You don't run across people like that a whole lot. So maybe that's a bit high. But other than that, that looks okay. Conservative seems to dominate with liberal, meaning they probably oversampled conservatives just a little bit. But I wouldn't say that's a huge issue. So what does any of this all mean? Let's look at what 538 has to say. I know 538 kind of sucks, but they're the only ones who really have much when it comes to WIC. And they have WIC being a semi-decent pollster. They have it in the A/B range. They haven't gotten that many polls, but if we look down here, we do have Pennsylvania's polling for WIC, and according to them, Trump was going to win by 2.1%. Instead, Biden won by 1.2%. That means that this poll underestimated Biden by 3.3%. Let's apply that to this poll right here with Oz and Fetterman. 4.5% difference, 3.3 margin of error in terms of how they did in 2020, and we see that Oz is still leading even with that. That's a significant sign. I think very much there's the possibility that they oversampled some Republicans, but I think this is a better poll in general because they seem to be tapping in to the part of Pennsylvania that is usually missed in polling, which is the western part of Pennsylvania. As we all know, Dave McCormick did well there in the primary. So that is significant, but most of those McCormick supporters are coming home to Oz as we speak. And while some of them are going to Fetterman, and Fetterman is doing okay in the rurals, it's still not going to be enough to take away the Republican rural vote that we all know Republicans get. So the fact Oz is dominating, even with that margin of error, is a significant thing. This is significant. I don't know how much we can put into this poll, but I would say this is definitely a sign that Fetterman is not necessarily out of the woods. I don't think Fetterman really should be that confident right now. I think he should be sweating bullets. I don't think this is looking very good for him. I think that if he wants to win, he needs to do good on that debate stage, and he needs to make sure that he improves his campaign, because his campaign running off of Oz being from New Jersey has gotten old pretty quick, and Oz has actually focused on policy and issues more with Fetterman, and it's paying off for Oz, as we can see. Oz doing all the campaigning that he has really, really helped. So I truly believe that Oz has the upper hand at this point. I think that Oz just needs to do good on the debate stage, and Fetterman needs to do mediocre, or at least it's a tie debate that doesn't really change, that changes a few voters' minds, maybe shifts the momentum towards Oz slightly, but doesn't really go incredibly well for either candidate. At the very least, that's what needs to happen. And if that happens, then Oz will probably win this race. That is my prediction. I think instead of being the 1.2%, that margin that is left over, it would be more like a 0.2%. I think this is going to be an incredibly close race, a tilt margin probably for whoever wins it, but we will have to wait and see. So that is my video on this new Wick poll. So I hope you like it and subscribe and do all that stuff that you like doing when you like somebody else's videos on YouTube. So do that. Bye.